Well, good afternoon and welcome to Live Impact News here on 13 News Now Plus. It is 1 o'clock p.m. on the dot. We made sure to be on time today after yesterday's delay. We wanted to make sure we were punctual for you guys, and we have a great day of live streaming for you here. There's a lot going on, and it starts with the House of Representatives, which will be in session on this Wednesday for the first time in 54 days. It's also day 43 of the government shutdown. So the House of Representatives in session for the first time in 54 days. It's day 43 of the government shutdown, and every expectation is that this will be the last day of the government shutdown. The House expected to hold first votes shortly after 5 p.m. on the Senate-passed legislation to reopen the government, with a final vote after 7 p.m. So it is likely, it is expected that this will be the last day of the government shutdown, the longest government shutdown in the history of the United States of America. It is something that, of course, we will have wall-to-wall coverage of here on 13 News Now in any way that we can. But as we said, that final vote not expected until after 7 p.m. So it remains to be seen if that actually comes to fruition in terms of the government reopening, but that is the expectation, with the House of Representatives called back to Washington, D.C. Again, for the first time in 54 days, they are in session. Now, we have coming up very briefly, in terms of the schedule that we have received from our live feed network, a White House press briefing that should be starting shortly. Once that begins, we will go live out to the White House and we will listen in. We've also had a stakeout for hours now outside of the Democratic caucus where they are meeting, and various representatives have been coming out and talking to media. So we want to play a couple of clips that we've gathered throughout the day from that stakeout outside of the Democratic caucus while we wait for White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt to take the podium at the White House press briefing. So that is what we are going to focus on for right now, as we are trying to monitor every angle of this potential government reopening. That is something that we will be focused on throughout the day today. Now, let's go ahead and listen in as part of this stakeout outside of that Democratic caucus. We'll touch on a couple other headlines if we can before we get to this White House press briefing. For now, let's listen to Democratic representatives.
Starting drilling again off the coast of California, and obviously you're a coastal district. I wanted to get your response to that.
My answer to that is hell no. We have legislation that we've carried year in, year out that says no drilling. It would ban drilling in federal waters off the California coast. There's similar legislation for Northern California, similar legislation for the Pacific Northwest, and also for the East Coast. And we're going to continue to move forward and make the case that, look, my Republican constituents don't want this, just like my Democratic constituents don't want this. We don't want drill rigs in our backyard. Our coastal economy is incredibly important, and the unnecessary risk, if you look at a community like Santa Barbara, where there was a recent spill, or you look at any of the other spills that have occurred, the California coast provides such a small amount of oil relative to the potential harm. It's the coastal economy for us is tens of billions of dollars a year, and putting it at risk to please the oil companies is unconscionable.
But Congressman, you're going to vote no today. I mean, what would you say to your constituents, you said, that have been hurt really hard by the shutdown? If the shutdown were to continue, how much more pain would there be?
Well, our constituents were very clear a week ago, Tuesday, that they wanted us to stand and fight for them. They wanted us to stand and fight for affordability, for health care, for a future that they can actually make ends meet. And this administration has done nothing but make it harder for them. And this vote today just allows Donald Trump to continue to leverage things like hunger to try to win political arguments. And that's something for me that is disgraceful.
Okay. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, so that particular congressman touching on a number of topics there. Obviously, oil drilling in California, right as we initially went into that interview, but maybe some of the content that we are more looking for on a day like today, his reasoning behind why he would vote no to the spending resolution. Okay, let's listen in on another representative outside of this Democratic caucus. And, you know, we do have a live representative talking right now, Naya. I wonder if maybe we go out to this live feed right outside of that Democratic caucus. And then if we need to, we can go back to some of the pre-recorded. All right, we got the thumbs up on that. Let's go live out to Washington, D.C.
There you go. But that's not in my hands, so that's up to them.
Congresswoman, what are you contemplating heading into the January 30th stopgap deadline that's in this bill? Do you think Democrats will be able to get concessions on health care before then, or do you think another shutdown is possible?
I really don't know. I think it depends on these vulnerable House Republicans who are not going to be able to go back to their constituents without telling them that they've done something on health care. And so, but I've seen some ridiculous things coming out from the Senate already, some of the Senate Republicans about, abortion restrictions in exchange for this. I mean, look, we just need to extend these tax credits and make sure that people have access, 22 million Americans have access, because they're fine to put, $1 million little prizes in this appropriations bill so 8 senators can sue the government. They're fine to send $40 billion to Argentina, but they don't want to help Americans afford their health care. That's really the fight that's on the table, and has been this whole time.
Congresswoman, Che Osei is planning to primary Hakeem Jeffries in New York. Have you heard about that? Any thoughts you want to offer on that?
I haven't heard about it, and I don't know him, and I don't know anything about that race.
Thank you.
Okay, so in that instance, we get a live look outside the Democratic caucus. We are navigating that live feed as Congresspeople emerge from that Democratic caucus. Some of them choose to give interviews. We have a gentleman giving an interview right now. Let's go back out live to Washington, D.C.
Deal that was corrupted by a last-minute insertion of allowing senators only to get a $1 million minimum payout for having their records. I mean, no regular American can avoid that. I put the full blame on Republicans who refuse, in both houses, the Senate and the House, who refuse to put the priority on Americans who are going to lose their health care. That's my statement.
Do you think that the Democrats got anything out of this? Is there anything you could say, yes, we are better at the end of the shutdown than we were before?
I think the American people have a clear understanding of who is on their side and who's not. The system as it is, it was very difficult to gain this concession, but it's clear the President, the Senate, and the House did not want to put the health of the American people first. They put the permanent tax breaks for the wealthy first.
Another shutdown January 30th?
Well, we'll just have to see. I think that Republicans need to worry about what happened last week in those last elections, and the American people continue to blame the Republicans for the shutdown this past 40 days or so.
What was for lunch today?
I was just munching on some chips, which I shouldn't be eating. It spikes my blood sugar.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm putting health first. So, anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And then David Till.
All right, members of Congress continue to emerge from that Democratic caucus, continue to make comment on the current situation when it comes to ending the government shutdown. You heard numerous questions about whether there will be another shutdown on January 30th. The current funding compromise runs through that time period. And so I suppose it's possible that if an agreement isn't come to in that time, there could be another shutdown. So this current funding compromise, temporary in nature, but nonetheless, we are still potentially hours away from ending the longest government shutdown in the history of the United States of America, regardless of how temporary that may be. So this is something that we are going to continue to keep tabs on. Anytime we have a representative emerging from that Democratic caucus, we will go live to that sound so that we can continue to gather information as, again, the House of Representatives back in session for the first time in more than 50 days as they are set to vote tonight on the funding resolution that would reopen the government. Okay, guys, I know this can get repetitive, but It is the story of the day. It is developing live right in front of us, and so we want to make sure that we keep the appropriate amount of focus on that. We, of course, are still waiting for the White House press briefing to begin. That's something that we'll go live out to as soon as that starts up. But for now, we've got some time to look elsewhere and touch on some of the other major stories of the day. Now, I'm going to bring on, you know what? I actually never introduced the People's producer, Nia Campbell. I was so eager to get the show started. We had so much going on. She did just give me a look like, that's right, you did not introduce me, Connor. I'm sitting over here waiting to talk to our lovely viewers. The People's producer, Nia Campbell. Nia, how are you today?
I'm doing good, but that was a look of, it's okay, we can keep moving.
Okay.
I don't need to be introduced.
It's not that you need to be introduced, but the people want to hear from Nia Campbell. The viewers want to know what you're up to and make sure that you are doing good. And this is your second stream of the day, so we got to make sure we check in. You're putting in a little bit of extra work today and a lot of extra effort as always. And I always like to bring you in because then we can kind of discuss a little bit where to go from here. We don't have any representatives currently emerging from the Democratic caucus. The White House press briefing has not started yet. And so we have some decisions to make. Now, there's a couple of things that have happened already today.
Right.
We had Secretary of Health Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Vice President J.D. Vance on stage conducting an event together, which we were able to record basically the second portion of that. And we also had an update on potential cryptocurrency scams that we sort of a press conference that was given on navigating some of those new style scams that have come about with cryptocurrency, a relatively new thing here in society. And so I think either one of those would provide a lot of value in this space while we wait for these other events to start. And so Nia, I want to know what you think would be ideal here.
I think since in the 10 to 12 stream with Eugene, we listened in on that scam center strike announcement. So I think that we can touch on the Vance and RFK presser if we can.
Okay, so we will stay with government. It's going to be a lot of politics today here on the stream, and we're going to listen in on Vice President J.D. Vance and Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. together on stage earlier today at an event. So let's listen in on that, and we'll be bouncing around quite a bit, we believe, with how this afternoon is developing. So we'll stay on our toes, but for now, we'll listen to that event from earlier today.
You and I have talked a lot about Appalachia, and both of us come from families that are intertwined personally and politically in Appalachia. You're kind of a golden child of Appalachia. You came out, you went to Ohio State, right?
That's right.
Yale Law School, a successful, uber successful business, a best-selling author, U.S. Senator, and now Vice President of the United States. But it's almost a kind of tragic reminder of the lost potential of almost everybody else in Appalachia, not only for poor health, it's got the worst health data of any region in the country, the highest cardiac disease, the highest obesity, the highest diabetes, the highest stroke rates, but also addiction, alcoholism, and suicide. It leads the nation for those things. And so I know it's something that you've spent a lot of time thinking about. How do we, because we can solve problems in Appalachia, we can solve them for the whole country.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the public health stuff in particular is very bad. And if you look at where life expectancy has gotten the worst in the United States, Appalachia is sort of at the top of the list. And the way that I realized this, actually, so my dad died of cancer a few years ago. And it was one of these sort of super aggressive cancers, came on very unexpectedly, and then all of a sudden he was gone a few months later. But I was talking with my wife, with Usha, about this, and Usha, she was like, have you ever had like a really important male figure in your life survive to the age of 70? I look at it and it's like, okay, my grandfather died at 67 from a very preventable illness, but 67 from a very preventable, very treatable illness. I think all of my aunts or all of my uncles, and not a single one of them that I could think of made it to 69. Maybe one of them made it to 70 or 71. And it kind of hit me that if you grow up in Appalachia, you are used to losing the people that you love very, very early on. And you want to talk about like populism, and you want to talk about people being pissed off. Well, yeah, people are pissed off when they don't have good jobs. And people are pissed off when things disappear and move overseas. And people are pissed off when they feel like, other countries are being prioritized over the United States of America. And all of that is part of the populist resentment of the past 20 or 30 years in American politics. You know what really pisses people off? When they realize that their loved ones are dying much sooner than everybody else. And that is a big part of the story of what's going on in Appalachia and why I think so many people in Appalachia feel left behind. I mean, my story, obviously, it's been, like you said, I'm like the golden boy. The things have just worked out for me in this really incredible way. I feel so lucky and so grateful for it. But I also feel a certain sense of guilt because there are a lot of people who grow up in families like mine who haven't had an easy life and who haven't had all this economic opportunity and who haven't had, a person that they've fallen in love with and they've been able to sort of build a stable, nice family like me and Usha have been able to build. And that gives me a sense of purpose because I want those people to have the same opportunities that I've had. But it also gives me a great sense of anger because we never should have gotten to the point that we are today. And the reason that we have is because of failed leadership, and it's failed leadership over generations. And by the way, you talk about Appalachia, you were talking about people who, though they don't have much, would take the shirt off their back and give it to a complete stranger because that's what you do. If you go back to America's biggest wars, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, which are the counties that filled their draft quotas with volunteers instead of with draftees? It's very often the parts in deep Appalachia where you've got grinding poverty, but you've also got this incredible love of country. So if any place in this country deserves not to be left behind, it's Appalachia. But on the public health stuff in particular, the numbers don't look good. And it's one of the reasons why I'm such a big supporter of what you're doing, because these are people who deserve.
Okay, that just froze there as Vice President Vance was in the middle of his answer, but we are going to go live back out to the Capitol building for more words from representatives now.
But we can't find a way to make permanent those tax subsidies to ensure that health care remains in reach for people. Let me just tell you one story. I have a constituent who is a social worker who received a letter that his health care was going to go from a little over $200 to now almost $1,000. He runs a men's homeless shelter. He's someone who was unhoused himself, who has changed his life and now does the transformative work of helping others to get on the best path. And his health care will not be in reach. So we're going to have people that are going to get hungrier, sicker, poorer, less safe. I mean, under a Republican majority, they continue to make history for all the wrong reasons. Imagine having the House, the Senate, and the White House, and you choose to use that majority to exact and enact harm. It's unconscionable and 100% preventable.
You mentioned you are getting encouraged to run for the Senate. Is that from people who think that Senator Markey is not doing a good job? Is it more about a generational thing? What's the sentiment you're getting from these people?
Again, right now what I'm focused on is reopening the government and mitigating the harm that my constituents are experiencing. And I am shoulder to shoulder with every single member of this Massachusetts delegation in this moment, focused on that.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time, Congresswoman.
Thank you.
Okay, we caught the tail end of those comments from another member of Congress, another member of the House of Representatives, and we feel as though there will continue to be more and more representatives emerging from that Democratic caucus and speaking to media. So we will continue to go back and forth out to Capitol Hill. Now, once again, as you can see on your screen, still waiting on that White House press briefing. Now, I want to go over something that has been in the headlines today, just in case it's asked about at the White House press briefing so that you have some context if it is asked about and if it is a topic of discussion. New headlines today involving Jeffrey Epstein. Newly released emails from Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. Within those emails, Donald Trump's name mentioned multiple times in correspondence between Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, one of his associates, and an author as well, Michael Wolff. So again, Donald Trump's name mentioned multiple times in private email correspondence between Jeffrey Epstein in conversations with Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as with author Michael Wolff. Now, those documents were obtained by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee earlier this year, and they have now been released to the public. Select emails from what was obtained have been released to the public. Now, Donald Trump, President Trump himself, did not write or did not send or receive any of those emails, we should say. President Donald Trump, again, did not send or receive any of those emails. He also has not been accused of any criminal wrongdoing in connection with Epstein or Maxwell, and the majority of those emails predate his time as president. And again, the House Oversight Committee obtained these documents by subpoenaing Epstein's estate earlier this year. Some of the emails released on Wednesday by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. And once again, Donald Trump did not send or receive any of these emails. They were sent from, it was correspondence between Jeffrey Epstein himself, his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, and an author, Michael Wolff, Donald Trump's name mentioned multiple times. So this is a story we'll continue to follow. I wanted to make sure that we gave you an update on that story just in case it's spoken about during the White House press briefing. Now, I rushed through the end of that because very briefly it seemed like we had another interview going on outside of the Democratic caucus, but it appears as though that was very brief. That does not look like it ended up being an actual interview. So we'll continue along here in the studio, and it looks like we do have another live event that has popped up, Naya, here on one of our feeds. We will touch on that. That looks like it also is around Capitol Hill, but for now we have Hakeem Jeffries stepping to the microphone outside of the Democratic caucus, live out to House Minority Leader Jeffries. Now,
people, we've said from the very beginning that we want to find a bipartisan path forward, that of course we want to reopen the government, but that we need to decisively address the Republican health care crisis, and that begins with extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Republicans saw fit on July 3rd to race back into town so they can enact the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, rip food from the mouths of hungry children, seniors, and veterans, and they did all of this so that they can enact massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors, and they made those tax breaks permanent. Democrats have introduced an amendment last night before the Rules Committee that would extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for 3 years to provide working class Americans with the certainty that they deserve. Republicans rejected it because they have zero interest in lowering the high cost of living for the American people, and Republicans have zero interest in addressing the health care crisis that they've created. Democrats will strongly oppose this legislation on the House floor.
Leader Jeffries, will you put a discharge petition on the floor for those ACA extension?
Yes.
Why 3 years? Why not one or something?
Affordable Care Act tax credits were extended by 3 years in the Inflation Reduction Act. The legislation that we will introduce in the context of a discharge petition will provide that level of certainty to working class Americans who are on the verge of seeing their premiums, copays, and deductibles skyrocket, in some cases experiencing increases of $1,000 or $2,000 per year. This is unsustainable, unacceptable, and it's un-American.
Is the discharge petition negotiable, given that some Republicans would be willing to vote for ACA extension, just maybe not in the exact way that it's being proposed now?
The Republicans have zero credibility on this issue. These are folks, these Republicans, who have tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act more than 70 different times in the last 15 years. There's no evidence that they're serious about extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. As a matter of fact, they were given a very reasonable proposal by Leader Schumer, a one-year extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits and a bipartisan commission to address the broken healthcare system moving forward. And they rejected it because Republicans have zero interest in fixing the healthcare crisis that they've created. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and as House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries finishes his statement, Caroline Leavitt has approached the podium at the White House to begin hers. Let's go out to the White House press briefing now.
on his trip to Asia with President Xi, where they discussed the need for China to crack down on fentanyl production and distribution, which ultimately makes its way here to the United States of America. And the FBI director recently traveled to China following President Trump's meeting to meet with his counterpart in Beijing. And he has a really positive announcement for the American people to share. So the president wanted me to bring the FBI director out to share that with all of you today. So Cash, please, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Caroline. As Caroline mentioned, we have some tremendous news thanks to President Donald J. Trump once again for the American people. As soon as the President of the United States took office, he issued a mandate to rid America of the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. Thanks to his leadership and direct engagements with China, we set up a framework to execute that mission 8 months ago. Attorney General Bondi immediately thereafter took steps to engage her counterpart in China at the Ministry of Public Security. Pursuant to their direct discussions, as the FBI director designated to run counterpoint on this, along with the Secretary of State Rubio and Ambassador Perdue and the team here at the White House, we set forward a path to implement the policy needed to crush the plague of fentanyl. Deputy Attorney General Blanche and our teams have been hard at work ever since, ultimately culminating in my trip to Beijing last week. This was only possible due to President Trump's historic engagement with President Xi just a few short weeks ago that set the stage for today's announcement. At that meeting, the leaders reached an agreement. But just to put this in frame for the American people, a reminder here that nearly 100,000 people died of fentanyl overdoses just last year alone. Here, this year, under this president, the FBI has seized 1,900 kilograms of fentanyl so far. That is a 31% increase from the same time period last year. To put it in perspective, that's enough fentanyl to kill 127 million Americans. Fentanyl precursors are what makes up fentanyl. While we, the interagency, the Department of Justice, have been fighting hard to seize and stop drug traffickers, we must attack fentanyl precursors, the ingredients necessary to make this lethal drug. That was the sole purpose of my trip to China, to eliminate these precursors. And if successful, we would suffocate the drug trafficking organization's ability to manufacture fentanyl in places like Mexico. This was the first time an FBI director has been to China in over a decade and received the audience with his counterpart to address this matter directly. And again, thanks to President Trump's direct engagement with President Xi, the government of China committed fully to my engagement there on the ground in Beijing at a level never seen before. While at Ministry of Public Security headquarters, I met with my counterpart at MPS, where the Chinese government agreed on a plan to stop fentanyl precursors. What does that mean? The People's Republic of China has fully designated and listed all 13 precursors utilized to make fentanyl. Furthermore, they have agreed to control 7 chemical subsidiaries that are also utilized to produce this lethal drug. Effective immediately, essentially, President Trump has shut off the pipeline that creates fentanyl that kills tens of thousands of Americans. These substances are now banned, and they will no longer be utilized by the Mexican drug trafficking organizations or any other DTOs around the world to make this drug. This historic achievement has saved tens of thousands of lives. This historic achievement would not have been possible without the tremendous team of President Trump, the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and Ambassador Perdue in China, whose ground-level engagements were imperative to achieving this result. This is yet another example of how President Trump defends the American people, provides security for the American people, and puts the American people first. This is a historic first-in-its-kind achievement by any president to stop the scourge of fentanyl, and it should be championed by every single American. This achievement will save lives. We are thankful for President Trump's steadfast leadership, and this FBI will fearlessly follow in his footsteps to ensure that this mission of safeguarding the American public is achieved every single day. Thank you. Thanks, Caroline.
Cash. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you again, Director Patel. Before we get going, I do have one quick scheduling announcement. Tomorrow, President Trump will be joined by the First Lady in the East Room for an executive order signing aimed at expanding opportunities for education, career development, housing, and other resources for young people transitioning from foster care to adulthood. This is part of the First Lady's Fostering the Future efforts, which are a Be Best initiative. In other news, the Democrats dragged on the government shutdown for 43 days, the longest shutdown in U.S. history. But tonight, thanks to Republicans, the White House is very hopeful that this shutdown is going to come to an end. The damage caused by the Democrats with this reckless government shutdown cannot be forgotten. It is entirely the fault of the Democrat Party. Just look at the vote count. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees have missed their paychecks. Tens of billions in wages and benefits were withheld, impacting vulnerable families. Millions of low-income Americans missed their SNAP benefits. Nearly 20,000 flights at airports across the country were delayed due to staffing shortages, causing Americans to miss family events, vacations, and work obligations. According to Airlines for America, an estimated 5.2 million travelers have had their flights disrupted over the course of the Democrat shutdown. And our economy has lost billions and billions of dollars in economic activity over the course of this shutdown, hurting consumer sentiment and crushing the travel and hospitality industries. According to a CBO estimate, the Democrat shutdown could end up decreasing fourth quarter economic growth by 2 whole percentage points. The Democrat shutdown made it extraordinarily difficult for economists, investors, and policymakers at the Federal Reserve to receive critical government data. The Democrats may have permanently damaged the federal statistical system, with October CPI and jobs reports likely never being released. And all of that economic data released will be permanently impaired, leaving our policymakers at the Fed flying blind at a critical period. It's hard to recap all of this without asking a simple question: why? Why have the Democrats put the American people through this pain for 43 days in a row? And it feels like Groundhog Day being up here again talking about this Democrat shutdown. And the answer to that question is pure partisan politics. They started this shutdown with a ridiculous demand to force taxpayer-funded healthcare benefits to illegal aliens who broke into our country. Even after it was clear President Trump and Republicans would never force American taxpayers to pay for free health care for illegals. In fact, President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill fixed that problem. The Democrats kept dragging this reckless government shutdown on for weeks longer to boost their turnout in an election, perhaps one may guess. That's because the Democrats are totally captured by their far left-wing base, who only care about attacking President Trump, even if it means hurting innocent Americans in our country. The Democrats' weakness and their unwillingness to buck the fringe members of their party dragged this harmful shutdown on for 7 weeks and inflicted massive pain onto the American public. But let's be clear. The clean CR being voted on today in the House of Representatives that will lead to the reopening of the federal government is what President Trump and Republicans have supported from day one. Our troops, air traffic controllers, and federal employees will be back to receiving their regular paychecks. Families in need will get back to receiving their food purchasing assistance, and the people's government will soon be back open for business. President Trump looks forward to finally ending this devastating Democrat shutdown with his signature, and we hope that signing will take place later tonight. On another matter, I want to address the affordability issue that's received a great deal of media attention this past week, which is ironic because it didn't receive that much attention when Joe Biden was here and inflation was at a record high 9%, the worst inflation crisis in modern American history. And President Trump won a landslide election in part to address the affordability issues created by Joe Biden and the Democrats. And that's exactly what President Trump has done since day one of his administration. Since the first day in office and every day since, the Trump administration has taken aggressive action to fix the Biden-created cost of living issues. The notion that the same Democrats who just shut down the federal government to sabotage our economy, rob people of their paychecks, and also helped Joe Biden ratchet up inflation to 9% are now suddenly affordability champions, that notion is completely absurd. And it's something only the liberal media would have the gall to push. But the reality is that President Trump and his administration have done so much to lower prices and increase the economic prosperity of the American people. And this president and his team of amazing economic advisors are going to keep working on this issue every single day. In less than 10 short months, President Trump signed the largest middle-class tax cuts in American history, including no tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security, which will guarantee that next.
Okay, guys, we are in a situation now where there are too many important live events to monitor all at once. We just heard from the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. She is ongoing in her presentation. We will get back to her if we can, but for now, they have taken the podium in Kentucky to speak about that deadly plane crash in Louisville. So we're going to go live out to that announcement first. We are recording this press briefing at the White House, and it will be ongoing. If we can make it back out there live, we can. For now, out to Louisville, Kentucky.
Incredible first response, being some of the first folks that were on the scene, being the lead fire department on the scene. They working in partnership with Louisville Fire and the other fire departments was truly incredible. Additionally, as we mentioned yesterday, a new hotline has been set up for anyone who has been impacted by the crash. That call center number again is 502-473-5271. That is open now. It will be open all days from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday. If you owned a business that was impacted, if you have lost your job as a result of being impacted, if you have been injured in some other way, if you believe that you have been negatively impacted by the crash, that is the number to reach out. Additionally, when you reach out, there may be an opportunity. We are getting ready to open tomorrow a community resource center. This community resource center will be by appointment that you can make by calling that line. It will be located at 200 High Rise Drive, right off of Fern Valley Road by I-65, to meet with individuals that can help you with the challenges that you may be facing as a result of the tragic UPS crash. One other person I want to thank is here with us today, and that's our Jefferson County Coroner, Joanne Farmer. Her and her team have been working tirelessly under incredibly challenging conditions around the clock to help recover all of the victims of this plane crash, to identify the bodies in the challenging conditions, and to notify the families of their losses. This work has been incredibly challenging, but great care has been taken by Joanne and her team, working as rapidly as possible so that identifications could be made as quickly as possible. At this point in time, we believe that all of the victims have been located, have been identified, and that families have been notified. So now I'd like to ask our Jefferson County Coroner, Joanne Farmer, to share a little bit more about the process and to also share with the community the list of the 14 victims who we lost in this tragic plane crash.
It really saddens me to have to be here and speaking to you about such a tragedy. All 14 victims have been identified. They were identified by DNA, some by DNA and dental records, some by DNA and medical records, but all of them were positively identified by the DNA. We finished this completion of testing about less than 24 hours ago, that it was all complete. All of the victims' families have been notified, and we've been working closely with them throughout this whole process. I'll go ahead and release the names now. On Flight 2976, Captain Dana Diamond, 62 years old. Captain Richard Wartenberg, 57 years old. First Officer Lee Truitt, 45 years old. Angela Anderson, 45 years old. Carlos Fernandez, 52 years old. Louis Fedden, 47 years old, and Kimberly Asa, who was the granddaughter, 3 years old, of Mr. Faden. Trinidad Trina Chavez, 37 years old. Continuing, there's Tony Crane, 65 years old. John Locks, 52 years old. John Spray, 45 years old. Matthew Sweets, 37 years old. Ella Petty Horton, 31 years old. And Megan Washburn, 35 years old. And on behalf of the entire coroner's office, to all the families, please accept again our sincere condolences for your tragic loss. Okay.
Thank you, Joanne. Thanks again to you and your entire team for the professionalism and the empathy that you all have shown. I know what a difficult process this must have been. Today, as we share the names of those who we've lost, our city feels the full weight of this unimaginable tragedy. Behind every one of these names is a circle of family, friends, stories that will forever be unfinished. I've heard it said that everyone dies twice. Once when you take your last breath, and again when your name is spoken for the last time. So as we hear these names today, let's never forget their lives, their laughter, their love, and all that they meant to those around them and to our entire city. Each of these victims represents a life full of purpose, interrupted far too soon, and also a life that will never fade, because we will always remember them. We will take care of their loved ones, walk with them through grief, and honor the lives they built by always saying their names. Captain Dana Diamond, Captain Richard Wartenberg, First Officer Lee Truitt, Angela Anderson, Carlos Fernandez, Trina Chavez, Tony Crane, John Lux, John Spray, Matthew Sweets, Ella Petty Wharton, Megan Washburn, Louisness Faden, and his granddaughter, Kimberly. May their memories be a blessing. May their memories strengthen us. May their families find comfort in knowing we stand beside them, not just today, but in all of the difficult days ahead. The funerals for these victims will begin in the coming days. And I ask our community, I ask the media to please respect the privacy of these families. If they request private funerals, please respect their privacy during these incredibly challenging times for the families of these 14 victims. During these times of tragedy and tragic loss, we also saw incredible acts of heroism, incredible acts of bravery, and fantastic public service. I've heard from the NTSB, from other federal partners, folks around the region, about the incredible work the first responder teams have done in response to UPS Flight 2976. And one of the ways that we provided a fantastic public service, I believe, during these challenging times is through the work of LMPD and their support of the victims' families over the past week. LMPD led that part of our response, and so now I'd like to call on Chief Paul Humphrey to talk a little bit more about that process and the work that they have been doing and will continue to do to support the families of each of these 14 victims. Chief Humphrey?
While we send our prayers and condolences to the families, there's going to be times where there will be stories that will be told about each one of the victims. But there's stories that will need to be told about everyone else as well. All of the first responders that rushed towards that fire and put their lives on the line. The employees of Grade A Auto Parts, one who tackled another employee in order to save his life, and then he got up and pulled the other one through the fire to get out. How Sean Garber has taken care of his employees, and his heart's just pouring out to them. He's doing everything he can to make sure that they get taken care of. But one of the things I do want to talk about is our victim services unit and how they were there from the very beginning to make sure that the families were taken care of in any way that we could. From the moment this crash happened, the victim services unit stood up the family assistance center over at our training academy. And what they did was they made sure that all of the questions that we could answer, even though they were few, got answered for the families. They made sure that the families ate. They made sure they had something to drink. They made sure that they could help connect them to the victims that were at the hospital. They kept them informed and they comforted them as much as possible. And when it came time for the end of the night, when we knew that there was no more work to be done that particular night, and we were not going to be able to give them any more information, they were talking about asking them to go home, pet your dog, hug your kids, get a little bit of rest if you can. And so what I told them is, it's okay to shut this down for the night. And they said, nope, we're going to stay here all night because if somebody shows up at 3 o'clock in the morning, we need to be here for them. And so for 2 days, our victim services unit worked 24 hours. And they stayed there making sure that anyone who needed anything had a resource that they could reach out to. And we hope that that type of service gave them just a little bit of comfort in the worst days of their life. And that's the type of work that you see from public service. That's what public service is about. It's about a test of character in the worst times possible and being able to be there for people when they need it the most. And I think that's what we saw, not just from LMPD, not just from the fire department, but we saw it from the average citizen, the average friend, the average family member, who, when their character was tested, they stepped up and showed what Louisville's all about.
Thanks, Chief. We'll take some questions from the media in a moment here, but just again to reiterate, for anyone else who is a survivor who has been otherwise impacted by the crash, please call 502-473-5271 for some assistance. And again, that's every day except for Sunday, 7 a.m., 9 p.m. And you can make an appointment to speak in person with someone at the Community Resource Center that will be open at those same hours starting tomorrow. And again, to the families of the 14 victims, our condolences. We will continue to be here to support you in the weeks, months, and years ahead. May each of your loved ones' memories be a blessing. We're now happy to take some questions from members of the media. Stefan. So there are several categories. The question about what is being done for the families of the victims. UPS set up the original phone number and response in addition to what you just heard the chief talk about, the support services that LMPD is providing if additional services are needed from other agencies. When it comes to financial and other support for each of these victims and their families, the UPS has been taking the lead on that right now in direct contact with each of the families. Everyone is going to have different needs. Of course, everyone has a funeral to come to pay for. But beyond that, there are so many other impacts that each one of these victims left for their families, and they'll be handling each one of those individually. The question was about how confident are we that no other victims will be found at the site. Right now, we have no reason to believe that there are any other victims at this site. The names that were on the lists that were copiously made by all of the people at the victim family center that you just heard the chief talk about, the names of those that are missing match the names of those who the coroner has identified as victims. The other individuals who were originally on that list that first night, LMPD has made contact with those other individuals, and so that we know, fortunately, they were not involved. There was some other reason that they were on that list, but they were not a victim of this crash. Yes. Well, what's on my heart today is just an emptiness, a feeling of loss for each of these 14 families. They certainly, the chief and I saw it that very first night when we were both at the Family Resource Center, and simply hugging the loved ones of people who were right there next to us, calling their family member and hearing the phone go right to voicemail time after time after time again, texting them and getting no response. They knew what the likely answers were at that time, but to have that certainty is, I hope, helpful closure for them. I know it certainly is not easy to hear, but I hope that with this certainty, their grieving can continue and turn to healing, and that they can begin to find ways to move forward, to recover from this trauma, and find joy and happiness in life once again, knowing it will never be the same without their loved one. The question was about services that are provided to first responders. They are aware of there are support services that we have here in Louisville Metro government. I believe that Oklahoma Fire Department and the other departments have also lined up additional services for first responders if they feel the need to speak with someone during this time, if certain people needed some time off as a result of the length of time that they stayed out at the crash site. That has been accommodated as well. So we've been working with that on a case-by-case basis. So the question was about businesses that they still don't have access to or vehicles that were left behind. We have reached out, our emergency responders, emergency management team has reached out to businesses that we're aware of in this location to provide them with sort of escorted access to their property to get anything that they need or to keep their business functioning as best as they can. In terms of when they will have full access to the property, we just don't know yet. Public safety comes first. The investigation is being completed. We know the pressure that we feel that we're putting on ourselves to get people back into their businesses, to get back going again. There are employees that are right now without a job because businesses are closed. We want them to get back into business. So we're working as hastily as we can, but of course, public safety comes first, and the NTSB needs to be able to complete their aspects of the investigation to give us access. Paul? The question was about NTSB and any new information and how long they'll be on the site. I defer those questions to the NTSB. They're the primary point of contact to release that information publicly. And I know they're working incredibly hard every single day. They didn't let the cold and the snow flurries, they didn't let that deter them from being out there to continuing the work. Other agencies, such as the EPA that was just with us yesterday, is continuing their work as well. I think it's a more complicated and larger debris field than they originally thought. And so I think it's going to take a little bit longer than they thought. How to measure that, I defer those questions to them. I don't want to get ahead of the NTSB. Right now, it's the NTSB. I mean, we're giving them access to the site. They've got control to make sure that they can continue their investigation. At the same time, we're doing all the things that we believe we need to do from a public safety perspective so that when they no longer need it to be cordoned off, that it's safe and clean. Again, vehicles that are going into the site have to be power washed before they leave the site on top of sand. We're making sure that everyone has their power back. So there are still things like that that are public safety in nature. We hope those are completed around the same time that the NTSB releases the site from their investigation as well. And then, or at least so that we can shrink it. Might not go back to totally open, but at least to shrink it so that folks that have businesses along grade A and for traffic and the like can be reopened. So if you are a business that is losing business as a result of the crash, you should call this phone number, 473-5271, if you believe you are an impacted business as a result of this crash. I'm sorry? It will provide someone who can take your information and evaluate the reason, the type of impact that you had, and begin to provide some assistance as a business owner, or if you're an employee that's been impacted, or if you've been injured but you are still living. Each individual that may be impacted might have a different situation, and so the evaluation of those claims will begin, understanding that for some people it's cash today. They've got to feed a family. They don't have a job as a result of this crash. Each person is going to be individual. Sure.
Personally, you say? Well, everyone is saddened by it. Everyone, it's a tragedy. And when you're in the middle of it and working, and you're in there and you're trying to locate the bodies, looking for body parts and so forth, your mind's busy with that. But now that we have become a little bit settled now, and we're down and we've already made death notification to the families, that was rough on them. There were a group of us yesterday that were doing that. And that's where I think our emotions start to rise at that point, because the search is not completely over, but primarily over. And I had a family member ask me yesterday, how do you ever get used to this? And I said, I don't. If I get used to this and it doesn't bother me anymore, I'm in the wrong profession. I need to move on to something else. So we have a lot of talking at the office. We are a really strong bond there. And I think there's almost a sense of relief that now we feel like we have all of them, and a sense of relief at this point now. Mm-hmm.
I believe, but I'm not certain, that UPS has made contact with the victim's family, but I defer to UPS on that question. I've been in contact with UPS executives, met with some today, and meeting with some tomorrow. I will be sure to relay that concern as well to them to make sure they are aware of it if they are not already. So all of that is being worked out. Those are some of the discussions that we began to have today about the process for reimbursement from the city's perspective, from the other agencies' perspective. Under federal law, following an airplane crash, there are certain things that the airline is required to pay for example, the funeral costs of each of the victims of the crash, and that's all specified by federal law. So we have a team of people, as does UPS right now, that's going through that. Some of it is insurance, some may be the company directly. There may be other parties that are involved in the repayment, and so we're working through all of that right now and trying to figure that out from the city's perspective, for other public agencies, and also I know that's a question for those who have been impacted, victims, their families, and others who are impacted. One more question, Emma. So I don't have a specific, the question was, where does all the oil that's been in the basin, where that's collected? I don't have a specific answer for you on that. I defer to MSD for that technical answer. But this is not the first time they've been cleaning up hazardous materials that are in the waterways or in the ground, or in this case, 30,000 gallons of oil that fortunately got into a basin that has been protected from getting into any of the waterways. So there are special crews that this is what they do. They remove hazardous materials safely and then dispose of them safely. What that specific process is, I'll defer to MSD on that, but that's what they're doing. It's not just being dumped somewhere else in an unsafe way. We will continue to keep you all updated with any information that we have available as it relates to the investigation. Again, that will primarily come from NTSB, but we do encourage everyone who's been impacted to call that number, to visit with the Community Resource Center, and we will continue to be here to support the community and those impacted. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so a devastating update out of Louisville, Kentucky regarding that plane crash. Now, every piece of news that we've gotten has been devastating when it comes to that situation. And we now know all 14 victims have been identified, and they told us the names and the ages of those victims. And one of those victims, the 3-year-old grandchild of one of the other people aboard that plane. So just a tragedy that is really unspeakable in terms of how devastating it is, not only for those families, but for that community, for everyone involved. And, that seems to be the final update when it comes to identifying victims. But as you heard, there's more to come in terms of getting the surrounding area back up on its feet, of course. But the loss of life just beyond tragic in that situation. And so that update, 14 victims have been identified when it comes to that jarring plane crash in Louisville, Kentucky. We had video here on Live Impact News. It was difficult to watch. It was just a shocking video to see that plane crashing in a fiery explosion and the loss of life that followed. Very, very difficult story, difficult headline, and a difficult time for everyone involved with that situation. So something that any more updates that are to come, we of course will bring them to you, but a very tough update to report right there. Now, we went to that press conference in the midst of a press briefing at the White House from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. I believe we're able to pick that up right where it left off. So we're going to go back out to the White House now and continue with that White House press briefing.
Lower their costs and incentivize hiring. The Trump administration has already cut 30 unnecessary regulations for every new one on the books, which we know will save employers and small businesses across the country thousands of dollars in regulatory burdens. All of these pro-Trump policies are working, and they will continue to work. Wages are rising at the fastest pace of the start of a presidential administration in 60 years. The cost of the typical new mortgage is down by nearly $3,000 per year. There's much work to do, and this administration will continue to do it. But President Trump has already made great progress in cleaning up the economic disaster that was created by Joe Biden. With that, I will take your questions today, and in our new media seat, we have Bev Turner, who works for a new outlet, a UK outlet, but based here in Washington, D.C., GB News. Bev, thank you for being here today. Why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Caroline. So the clock is ticking on the Friday deadline by which the BBC must retract and apologise for their malicious edit of the President in a documentary shown last year. The recently resigned Director General of the BBC yesterday described the organisation as the very best.
Okay, we are back here in the studio because House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has just taken the podium outside the Capitol building. We will go back to the White House press briefing as soon as we get a chance, but we are going to take this live press conference now. Okay, as you may be able to tell, we are having some audio issues, and there we go. The audio just
Good
kicked in.
afternoon.
Back out to Hakeem Jeffries.
Good afternoon. It's a high honor and a distinct privilege to be joined today by Whip Catherine Clark, Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar, members of House Democratic leadership, and the House Democratic Caucus. House Democrats are here on the Capitol steps to reiterate our strong opposition to this spending bill because it fails to address the Republican health care crisis and it fails to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. House Democrats will continue to support our men and women in uniform. We will continue to support hardworking federal employees. We will continue to support our law enforcement personnel. House Democrats will continue to support our air traffic controllers. We will continue to support our TSA agents. We will continue to support our civil servants who have been under attack since day one of the Trump administration. But we cannot support the Republican effort to gut the health care of the American people. Today, House Democrats will introduce legislation to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for 3 years to make sure that tens of millions of Americans don't experience dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles. We believe that working class Americans, middle class Americans, and everyday Americans deserve the same level of certainty that Republicans always provide to the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. The same level of certainty. And so we're calling upon our Republican colleagues to join us and extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And we will be working hard today, tomorrow, and throughout the balance of this year to make sure that those Affordable Care Act tax credits are extended. Now, Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They own the mess that has been created in the United States of America. They own it. In a few hours, we will convene on the House floor. And our message to the American people is no matter what happens on the floor later on today, our promise to you remains the same. House Democrats will continue to fight to make your life more affordable. House Democrats will continue the fight to address the Republican health care crisis, and House Democrats will fight to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. This fight is not over. We're just getting started. We're just getting started. Now, among the many outrageous things that has been said during the Trump Republican shutdown or done during the Trump Republican shutdown, the longest shutdown in American history, is that Donald Trump made the stunning claim that in his mind, he holds two titles, that he has two positions. Donald Trump says that he's both the president and the Speaker of the House. That's what Donald Trump said in the midst of him shutting down the government. And what we've seen from compliant, sycophantic Republicans, corrupt House Republicans, is they continue to go along to get along. They don't function like a separate and co-equal branch of government. From the very beginning of this presidency and all the way through this Trump shutdown, Republicans in the House have continued to act like a wholly owned subsidiary of the corrupt Trump cartel. That may be the House Republican position. For damn sure, it ain't the House Democratic position. Because we know, and what we say to the American people is that we don't work for Donald Trump. We don't work for J.D. Vance. We don't work for your billionaire donors. We work for the American people. And that's what this fight by House Democrats joined by our colleagues on the other side of the Capitol, has been all about. We work for the American people. As we stand on the Capitol steps, ready to continue this battle on the House floor, a battle that we waged week after week after week, and that will continue regardless of the outcome. We say to the American people that we know you deserve better. You deserve much better than the chaos, the cruelty, and the corruption that you've seen. And so as House Democrats, we're going to continue this fight to lower the high cost of living in a country where America is far too expensive, far too many people struggling to live paycheck to paycheck, can't thrive, and can barely survive. That should not be the case in the United States of America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And so as Democrats, we're committed to addressing this affordability crisis. That's what this fight has been all about. And we'll continue to work hard to lower the high cost of living. We'll continue the fight to fix our broken healthcare system. And we'll continue to fight to stand up for Medicaid. We'll continue to fight to stand up for Medicare. We'll continue the fight to stand up for the Affordable Care Act and an extension of the tax credits. We'll continue to fight for your hospitals. We'll continue to fight for your nursing homes. We'll continue to fight for your community-based health clinics. And we'll continue to fight for the principle that in this great country, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, healthcare can't simply be a privilege available only to the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. Healthcare must be a right available to every single American. And that's the fight that House Democrats will continue to wage for the American people. It's now my great honor to yield to a freshman leadership representative, someone who's gotten off to a great start, helping to lead the freshman class, the first term members during this turbulent and tumultuous period here in the United States Congress and for the country. From the great state of California, the Honorable Luz Rivas.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries, Whip Clark, and Chair Aguilar for your leadership. House Democrats are back in Washington, D.C., ready to vote once again to protect health care for working families across the country. Recently, I spoke with Speaker Johnson directly in the Capitol and hand-delivered stories from my and my fellow freshman colleagues' constituents who have been impacted by the Republican shutdown. This includes the story of Stephen Heller, a constituent from Van Nuys, which is in my district. Stephen and his wife are independent contractors who have to pay for their own health insurance. Because Republicans let the ACA tax credits expire, Stephen and his wife are facing a monthly health care premium increase of $1,000 per month in 2026. This will bring their monthly total to nearly $2,100 per month and nearly $25,000 for the year, just in health insurance. That is, in Stephen's own words, a terrible financial blow and an enormous financial burden. Constituents across the country like Stephen and his wife cannot afford Republicans' deal. I will vote no and continue to fight with House Democrats to protect the ACA subsidies that Stephen and millions of Americans rely on. House Democrats will continue our fight to protect health care, lower the cost of living, and keep the American dream attainable for all. Thank you. And next, I'd like to introduce my amazing colleague from Michigan, Congresswoman McDonald-Rivet.
Thank you very much. I come from mid-Michigan, the part of the country where workers actually invented the American dream, to work hard enough to pay your bills, put a little bit away, and take your kids on vacation every once in a while. But the dream is further and further out of reach. In my district, 70% of our jobs pay less than $60,000 a year. So this healthcare crisis that Republicans have created, $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts and gutting the ACA in order to pay for the tax break for the ultra wealthy, is making things so much harder. So let me give you an example. A couple in my district, they actually go to my church, called and told me they're in their 60s and they rely on the ACA tax credits to pay their insurance premiums. But now, because the Republicans have failed to extend these credits, their insurance premiums are going to jump by $11,000 next year, an impossible sum for people on the edge of retirement. Health insurance already consumes 72% of their retirement income. Let me say that again. 72% of their retirement income, and is about to go up another $11,000. That means they're facing devastating choices between doctor's visits and paying the mortgage, between cancer screenings and putting food on the table, between prescription drugs and heating their home. Or even, frankly, to get insurance at all. They told me, and this is a direct quote, they are strongly considering going without coverage and taking their chances rather than continuing to pay the premium. Because here's the reality. They actually can't pay that premium. I came to Congress, we all came to Congress to help people like them. Lower cost, better care, more jobs. One easy critical step is simply passing to extend the ACA credits. Yes. It is time we pass it before they pay the cost. Thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce my colleague from California, Representative Tran.
Good afternoon. I am Congressman Derek Tran, and I proudly represent Orange and LA counties in California's 45th district. Today, I want to share the story of Peter and Esther. Peter and Esther are retired and living in Orange County, California. They're on a limited income, and their health insurance costs are overwhelming. They pay over $18,000 every year just in health care premiums. And next year, their costs are going up to over $21,000. When you're retired and living on a fixed income, that kind of cost increase can be devastating. Peter has been trying to get his wife, Esther, on Medicaid so she can get the care she deserves without going bankrupt. But he keeps hitting roadblocks. The red tape, long lines, and staffing shortages preventing Esther from even being considered for Medicaid coverage is harmful to our country. And instead of joining us to fix this crisis, the Republican majority has demanded more cuts, causing more pain and suffering for the American people. I am here today for people like Peter and Esther. They deserve better than this. Every American deserves better than this. While we're fighting for health care, Republicans are fighting for tax cuts for the billionaires. I'll keep fighting to make sure people like Peter and Esther can afford the care that they deserve. And I hope our colleagues on the other side of the aisle will join us. Thank you so much. It is with great privilege that I introduce and yield time to Congresswoman Sarah McBride from the great state of Delaware.
Thank you so much, Representative. Thank you so much, Leader Jeffries, Whip Clark, and Chair Aguilar for bringing us together today. We stand here today, 42 days into a government shutdown and 54 days since the House last met, because Republicans have presented the American people with a false choice between reopening government and addressing this healthcare crisis. There is simply no reason why we can't do both. The only thing that has been standing in our way is Republican cruelty. Republicans have played a game of chicken with food assistance, travel safety, and federal paychecks, all because they will stop at nothing to cut your health care. The only thing that congressional Republicans are more loyal to than Donald Trump is to cutting the health care of the American people. Let's be clear. This healthcare crisis is a choice by congressional Republicans and Donald Trump, who have inserted a $1 trillion bomb into the American healthcare system. And it is starting to go off. Millions right now are facing skyrocketing premiums. The largest cut to Medicaid in American history is on the horizon. Rural hospitals will close. doctors' offices will shutter. Donald Trump loves to own things and slap his name on them. Well, he now owns the American healthcare system. It is Trump care. Millions losing coverage, that's Trump care. Americans paying more for insurance, that's Trump care. Everyone having to drive longer and take more time off work, that is Trump care. Donald Trump and congressional Republicans have raided your health care and used that money as a piggy bank to reward their donors with massive tax breaks. Cruelty is the currency of his corruption, because Donald Trump only cares about himself, his ballroom, and his billionaire buddies, and he certainly doesn't care about you. House Democrats are here for everyone, whether they voted for us in the last election or not. I'm here on behalf of all of my constituents, including a family of 4 in Middletown who will see their premiums skyrocket by $10,000 next year. That's why we are all voting against this budget. And it's why we will not stop until every single American can get the health care that they need to live and thrive in America.
All right, that was a live listen in to House Democrats outside of the Capitol building today. The House in session for the first time in 54 days. And on that note, we actually have a special guest today taking time out of what I can imagine is an incredibly busy day. Congresswoman Jen Kiggans, representative for the 2nd District here in Virginia, joins us now on Live Impact News. Congresswoman, I do not believe we've been able to meet. I am Connor Reel. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us here.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. And, you know, I know that everybody is back in Washington, D.C. There will be votes tonight on this funding compromise. I, of course, want to start there. The end of this government shutdown appears to be in sight, which I'm sure will be a relief to many Americans. But that funding compromise comes without the extension to the Affordable Care Act tax credits that have been championed by Democrats, and something that you have been vocal about. A letter that you wrote with other members of Congress said, noted how important those are to maintain health coverage for millions of Americans. This funding compromise does not include extensions for those premium tax credits. Are you concerned about the health care for those millions of Americans as we push through a funding compromise without those extensions?
Yeah, I find the messaging coming out of the Democratic conference to be it's offensive and contradictory and just very off-putting and personally offensive to me as a nurse practitioner. I will say that we need healthcare reform to be put in place, but the Democrats have held us hostage for 42 days, and we have been not able to do our work here in Congress. We have not been able to be here in person to have regular legislative order. And to what effect? What have they gained? They have gained nothing. I mean, the CR that was passed in the Senate requires a vote, and I look forward to that vote because we do need to be having these healthcare discussions. But aside from there's 3 appropriations bills in there, it extends our funding deadline to January 30th. But we need to be here in person, and the fact that we were shut down for 42 days so that the Democrats in the Senate could play ridiculous political games has been wrong. And we certainly need to do better than that, and we need to have these healthcare discussions. So let me grab my earpiece. I'm not sure. Can you tell me where that went?
No problem.
I can hear you, but we need to get back to regular order for sure.
Absolutely. If anyone can relate to a faulty earpiece, it's us here in the media. So I completely understand always trying to get that IFB right. Now, we talk about the 42 days and how Senate Democrats have kept the government from being reopened. You know, I want to ask, and I want to find the right way to frame this. Their message has been that they are not voting through these funding bills because they want to force extensions to those premium tax credits. If their party feels as though this is the only way they can meaningfully get health care for millions of Americans on the table, is that something that you can relate to from a negotiation leverage standpoint?
Yeah, so we introduced, my name is on a bill that introduced this issue, this premium tax credit issue in the beginning of September, so before the government shutdown. So I don't care if the government is shut down or open, we need to be having these discussions, and there's got to be a better solution than Obamacare, which is very expensive. But the premium tax credit issue, these are COVID-era leftover tax credits that that were set to expire, that the Biden administration, when they put them in place, set them to expire at the end of this year. So my concern is that people's health insurance premiums will go up unexpectedly at the end of the calendar year. As a nurse practitioner, I want people to have affordable and accessible health care. So we introduced a one-year extension of these premium tax credits to give Republicans and Democrats time to come together to have these discussions. The fact that the Senate Democrats chose to create chaos for 42 days to prevent us from even being in Washington was wrong, and now we're up against a compressed timeline. This bill has great bipartisan support. We've got 14 Democrats, 14 Republicans. I would love to see either my bill or a version of my bill that provides a longer runway for these premium tax credits to exist. We need to be having those discussions, but I couldn't do that when the government was shut down. So now that we're back, we can have these discussions. Happy to put that to talk about healthcare, because I need people out there to be able to receive affordable and accessible care.
And now that you guys are back, now that the government is on the brink of reopening, but we do have this compressed timeline, what can you do specifically to ensure that your bill or another like it does pass in order to protect that healthcare coverage?
Yeah, we'll certainly have discussions with leadership. It's one of the things that we've been doing. We've written a letter to Speaker Johnson. We had, almost 13, I think, Republicans get on a letter to just emphasize how important this is and that the calendar clock is ticking. And for some reason, Congress has trouble getting its work done on time. So because we know that, the end of December is next month, I just want to give us a runway. I think we can put reasonable changes in place. We did it with Medicaid reform. Those were important discussions, but we had them for almost a year leading up to reconciliation. And as a healthcare provider, I had a seat at that table. And as a district, Virginia is a Medicaid expansion state. I have plenty of patients that receive Medicaid. I have patients that are on Obamacare or a marketplace healthcare. I have fellow nurses that are on ACA healthcare plans. So I care about them, but I also understand what those challenges look like, not just for patients, but for providers. And I think that we need to have more transparency when it comes to healthcare costs. So we need to provide some competition for health insurers. So there's a better way to do healthcare, but I couldn't be here in Washington and having those hearings, those committee meetings, because the Senate Democrats chose to shut down the government. And that was wrong. They held us hostage. They held the federal workers' paychecks, my military families who are anxious about their paychecks. Our Border Patrol, our federal law enforcement, our air traffic controllers, they held all of those people's paychecks hostage under the guise of just wanting to have healthcare discussions, which we were happy to have any day of the week. So it's been a very frustrating period, but we're certainly happy to be back here in Washington and ready to get back to legislative work.
And when it comes to that government shutdown, and you speak about how so many American people had their paychecks withheld and the suffering only grew as the days stretched on of this shutdown, something that I have heard floated about as a means to prevent something like this in the future is if members of Congress were to have their paychecks withheld during any future government shutdowns. Is that something that you would support and that you think could be effective in preventing another situation like this?
Yeah, absolutely. We requested that our pay be held, as did many members of Congress, many Republican members of Congress. I don't know if any senators did, but that's certainly one way to address this problem. Yes, our staff didn't get paid. All the federal workers didn't get paid. So members of Congress shouldn't get paid. I think we should stay here and have our August recess withheld until we can get our appropriations bills passed. There's no reason that Congress can't do a better job of passing things on time. I served for 3 years in the state Senate in Virginia. We have a budget that we pass every other year. We also don't spend more than we take in. There's some lessons to be learned from our state house in Virginia, but we can get these bills done on time, and we should. And now we have 3 appropriations bills that will come with this continuing resolution out of the Senate. But there's 12 in total. We have 9 more to go. So there's certainly work to do, but it's important for us to be back so we can get that done.
And I sat in a panel not long ago with yourself, Bobby Scott, Rob Whitman, and Jennifer McClellan, where you guys spoke about, I think, a monthly lunch where you get together and you talk about the issues that face Virginia and how you look to work together despite your differences to solve problems. I think for a lot of regular Americans watching this shutdown stretch on, even whether you want to blame either side, it's clear that in Congress, that level of cooperation does not exist right now. Why is the cooperation that we have here in Virginia between our representatives not able to translate to the federal level on a whole?
Yeah, well, you saw that we just lived through a contentious election cycle also. And then you saw a clip of, I mean, Senator Kaine was asked by a reporter in the hallway, what he thought about healthcare. He said, I've been too busy focused on the Virginia elections. And oh, by the way, the chaos that the Senate Democrats created. Well, that chaos impacted people's paychecks. So, of course, that had an impact on our elections that we just had here in Virginia, which were disappointing to say the least. So, it's all tied together, and it's a game. It's a game that the Democrats have been playing. They've played it before, and they played it again. And that's not why people like me ran for Congress. I mean, I ran for Congress as a military veteran, as a Navy spouse, as a Navy mom, as a person who understands healthcare, who has 4 children that I'm trying to raise in a very complicated and complex world. I care about keeping our families safe. I did not run for office to play political games. And we see this time and time again coming out of the Democratic Party, and then this fear mongering and these talking points. And it is wrong, and it created a hostage situation for 42 days, and it has to stop. So thank goodness we are here in Washington. We can't wait to reopen the government and to get back to work to doing the good things that we were elected to, like the Working Families Tax Plan that you saw come out of our reconciliation work this summer, so that we know that people care about having more money in their bank accounts, their paychecks, and that tax extension we gave them, the no tax on tips and overtime, the doubling of the child tax credit. I mean, there were some really good things in that legislation, the $150 billion defense plus up, which we will feel in Hampton Roads. There are the border security pieces. These are the reasons why the American people came out last November and voted for this change, and we are continuing to give it to them. And I don't need the distractions and the chaos that the Democrats continue to cause. It impedes our work.
And, we talk about elections. You mentioned the Virginia elections and the message that was sent last November. This November, a very different message sent by voters here in Virginia, a number of Democratic victories, including the entire gubernatorial ticket. When you hear your constituents and you see the message that the people of Virginia are sending with their vote, at least, what does that tell you, and does that change anything about your approach? Are there any lessons to be learned from the referendum that this election may have provided for Republicans in Virginia?
Yeah, so of course the election was disappointing as a Republican, but I will say it just drives home the fact that we need to be talking about those issues. It was almost that the Democrats talked about. It was almost like they adopted our talking points of lowering costs and safer communities. Republicans have been saying these things. We have put great work in place at the federal level, and the Democrats saw that our messaging has been working, and the priorities that we have are also winning messages. We won last November in a very big way. We have a Republican House and Senate here in Washington, a Republican White House. So the Democrats adopted our winning message. And so, the jury is out now. So I hope the voters will watch in Richmond when this legislative session starts in January to see if those things are actually, if they are able to put those things in place. But as a Republican, we need to do a better job, perhaps, of that messaging, of telling the voters why exactly we too care about the rising inflation that's skyrocketing, and the cost of groceries and housing and healthcare, and the things that I care about as a working mom, as a person raising a family. So I'm here to put those good policy changes in place. And this next year we have midterms coming up, midterm elections in 2026, and members of Congress are back on the ballot. So we'll be using this next year to make sure that our messaging is there, so that we can tell voters, and with actual factual information that is true, the work that we have done and where our priorities lie, and not just talking points to win an election on top of creating chaos.
And speaking of those congressional elections, you will be in a rematch against Elaine Luria, a race that you ran a couple of years ago. When you look at running against the same person for a second time, going up against Elaine Luria for a second time under different circumstances where you are the incumbent now, what are your thoughts on that rematch?
Yeah, well, I will say there's a competitive primary. You need to know that there's a competitive primary, multiple people in that race. And I am so focused, and always had been, on doing good work for the 2nd District. And I know my constituents and our voters see that. But I will tell you one thing: when it comes to the midterm elections, people in Virginia's 2nd District have no interest in returning to the failed policies of the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi. And they have no interest in returning to skyrocketing inflation, to wide open borders, to the weakness on the world stage, the things that we saw under the last administration. So the voters see what we do. They know that we have been working hard to be a common sense voice for Virginia's 2nd District. I will continue to do my work every day, and it's a privilege of a lifetime to represent this district. And I know the voters will pay attention and reward us in November.
And there was, such a drastic swing when it comes to the vote for Governor Glenn Youngkin versus the vote for Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger in the 2nd District. Does that tell you anything about how they feel about President Donald Trump's policies? Do you feel as though maybe they are bucking back against some of the things that they have seen over the last year?
The president wasn't on the ballot this time, so this was certainly, again, I think that they saw what the winning message was last November, and those have always been our consistent Republican priorities of the economy, of how much people are paying for everyday items, but also for things like houses and new cars and how much it costs to raise a family. And so we saw them adopt that. So, we'll see what happens in Richmond in January, but I know Governor Youngkin has done great work at inviting businesses to come to Virginia and the investment that makes in our economy here in the Commonwealth. So it's up to us to continue to just make sure people know what the good work was, and that we certainly have more work to do.
And we've been, witnessing redistricting, sort of a domino effect throughout the United States recently that has come to Virginia. Significant steps have been taken that could set up a situation where the voting lines are redrawn. How much do you worry about the 2nd District potentially looking much different than the 2nd District that you ran in a few years ago?
Yeah, so as far as redistricting goes, we had a referendum 5 years ago, so 2020, and the voters overwhelmingly, 67%, voted for an independent redistricting commission to draw our lines here in Virginia. And I'd say they were drawn pretty fairly. We, before the election in November, we had a 1-seat Democrat majority in our state House, 1-seat Democrat majority in our state Senate, and we had a 1-seat Democrat majority in our congressional delegation. We have 11 members of Congress, 6 are Democrat, 5 are Republican. So pretty evenly drawn, and that was an independent commission that drew those lines. That's in our Virginia Constitution. Virginia voters voted overwhelmingly, 67%, 5 years ago after our census, that we would have that constitutional requirement to have an independent committee draw those lines. Pretty evenly split. The fact that now Virginia Democrats are wanting to gerrymander our state to draw so that they have, the plan I have seen is 10-1. They want 10 Democrat seats, 1 Republican seat. That is not equal representation, and that disenfranchises so many voters. And we hear them say things like, oh, Texas did it, California did it, these other states. Those other states are not Virginia. There's a Virginia way to do politics. This is the home of our founding fathers. I certainly believe that we should take an ethical approach. This is a constitutional approach that the Virginia voters voted for. So the fact that we see Virginia Democrats in the State House now try to rush through a redistricting plan where you very quickly called a special session, then the next week you had an election, and then you're going to have another session in January, and you're going to put that on the ballot 90 days later and get this whole thing done in 6 months when we have an election in November, which, oh, by the way, would push back primary dates and filing deadlines and really delay the whole requirement, or, the whole election process. It's not right. And, we'll fight one fight at a time. But if we have to, we'll make sure we're educating voters about, how it disenfranchises and changes our Constitution. And then we just solidified that in 2020. So we need to stick with those lines for sure. Fight fair. I feel like they can't beat us at the ballot box. So they resort to these other gerrymandering, just ways to gerrymander districts to win because you can't beat us at the ballot box.
And do you feel as though it was unethical for them to start the redistricting process in Texas?
Are you saying one more time?
Do you feel as though it was unethical for representatives in Texas to initiate their redistricting process in their state? I don't think
we should be redistrict after a 10-year census, and that's what we did. So every state, I don't think any state should be drawing new lines right now. I think it's, again, political games creating chaos. We have real work to do, so including opening the government, which is what we're going to get back to today. But we have to stop these games.
And I want to ask, you are co-chair of the Women, Peace, and Security Caucus. It's a group that you advocated for support for on the Senate floor not too long ago. Do you feel as though the WPS caucus has gotten the support that it deserves? And if not, what does it need in order to carry out its duties?
Yeah, Women, Peace, and Security. I am the co-chair, and that's been a group I have we've done some really great work at just promoting women, especially in recovering nations, things that we saw natural disasters happen, war-torn countries, just meeting with those groups of women. We want to incentivize them. We know that they are the people that can be so instrumental in the recovery effort and educating children, taking care of families, rebuilding homes. So being able to be a part of that, we have been loud advocates. That's a bipartisan group that Congressman Frankel is my co-chair. And we have just co-signed many letters and reached out to make sure that the administration knows that we prioritize this group. It's an international group. It's not just a domestic group. So we have an international agenda, making sure that the contributions of women are recognized. It's something that I certainly feel strongly about. And I'm just proud to be a co-chair of that group.
Yeah, and with all the great work that you guys have done, you brought the caucus up in front of Secretary Hegseth. I'm wondering if you brought that up because you're concerned about the amount of support that the caucus may get.
Yeah, I mean, I want to make sure I'm a loud advocate. I believe in that caucus. It's I'll say that to anyone I can get in front of that might have an impact on funding or just the direction of the caucus. But I certainly feel strongly and will continue to be a loud advocate.
Yeah, and as we know, here in the 2nd District, you served with distinction in the United States military, a helicopter pilot for many years. I want to ask some questions about potential changes that may be coming to our armed forces. I want to read a quote from a speech from Secretary Hegseth. He said, "For too long, we've promoted too many uniformed leaders for the wrong reasons, based on their race, based on gender quotas, and based on historic so-called firsts." I'm wondering, as someone with experience in the armed forces and now as an elected official, do you feel as though that statement holds merit? Have we promoted uniformed leaders for the wrong reasons, based on race, gender quotas, and historic firsts?
I mean, I think that we need to be promoting people irregardless. You know, look at military service. When I look at our military service, I don't see a lens of race or religion or politics. When I served in uniform, we were all very much one team, one mission. That's how it should always be. I mean, we look at our military service. Are you performing your military service? Are you doing your job? That's how we're promoted. That's how we're rewarded. It's certainly how I served and how I will continue to serve.
And we're almost out of time, but so during your service, you saw promotions that you saw were based on merit during your time in the armed forces.
I did.
Okay, and then I also want to ask the Defense Advisory Committee on Women's Services. Is that a committee that you're familiar with?
Yes, exactly.
So that committee had been around for 70 plus years. It was abolished in September of 2025. I'm wondering if that's a committee that you think should continue to exist or should be brought back, I suppose. Oh. It appears as though we lost Congresswoman Jen Kiggins. She was incredibly generous with her time. We, of course, appreciate her joining us here on Live Impact News. Back in Washington, D.C. for a critical vote today on potentially reopening the government on that funding compromise. It's 2:42 now. First votes in the House will be held shortly after 5 p.m. So her taking the time to spend with us here on Live Impact News is incredibly generous of her. We do appreciate it, and touching on a number of topics with us. So thanks very much to Congresswoman Jen Kiggins for spending so much time with us and answering every question that we had here on Live Impact News. All right, so now we're back in the studio. We've got about 17 minutes left in the show here. And, I think that when we look at live events, there's not much going on. Something that we were in and out of throughout the day was the White House press briefing. So I think that we should go back, we should listen in on that, and then we'll meet back in the studio very briefly and see if there's any last things that we need to cover. Oh, hold on just a brief moment. We are going to take a moment here to go back to that a soundbite from earlier, and we'll be back on Live Impact News in just a moment.
Of starting drilling again off the coast of California, and obviously you're a coastal district. I wanted to get your response to that.
My answer to that is hell no. We have legislation that we've carried year in, year out that says no drilling. It would ban drilling in federal waters off the California coast. There's similar legislation for Northern California, similar legislation for the Pacific Northwest, and also for the East Coast. And we're going to continue to move forward and make the case that, look, my Republican constituents don't want this, just like my Democratic constituents don't want this. We don't want drill rigs in our backyard. Our coastal economy is incredibly important, and the unnecessary risk, if you look at a community like Santa Barbara, where there was a recent spill, or you look at any of the other spills that have occurred, the California coast provides such a small amount of oil relative to the potential harm. It's the coastal economy for us is tens of billions of dollars a year, and putting it at risk to please the oil companies is unconscionable.
But Congressman, you're going to vote no today. I mean, what would you say to your constituents? You said that have been hurt really hard by the shutdown. If the shutdown were to continue, how much more pain would there be?
Well, our constituents were very clear a week ago, Tuesday, that they wanted us to stand and fight for them. They wanted us to stand and fight for affordability, for health care, for a future that they can actually make ends meet. And this administration has done nothing but make it harder for them. And this vote today just allows Donald Trump to continue to leverage things like hunger to try to win political arguments. And that's something for me that is disgraceful.
Okay. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, Rick. Congressman Dingle, can we talk to you quick?
What if I said no?
I mean, I would respect that, but I always want to talk to you. You're planning to vote no today.
That is correct.
What do you say to your constituents, though, that have gone through so much pain as a result of the shutdown?
I have a lot of government workers in my district, and I saw the TSA yesterday, and they said to me, keep fighting. They are hurting. I met with the air traffic controllers the day the government shut. Every week I've met with my government workers in my district, and they know what we're fighting for. So, I mean, it's health care. I cannot tell you how many people in the last few weeks, as they are getting their premiums, not only the affordable exchange premiums, but people with...
All right, my apologies for the very quick wrap to a soundbite there. We were having some technical difficulties, but really those technical difficulties were just providing the warm welcome for Hunter Forst that he deserves to join us in the studio. One of our favorite meteorologists here at 13 News Now. Typically we see you at the beginning of the stream, sometimes halfway through, but we've got you at the very end here. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Hunter. And what do we need to know about the forecast?
It's going to be pretty much next couple of days. I mean, every day is going to be very similar. Sunny, cool, right around 60 degrees, but a nice warm up on Sunday, right around 70. So I know it's been pretty chilly the last couple of days, especially yesterday morning. Today, luckily a little bit warmer, and then could see, some low 70s returning by the time we get into this weekend, especially on Sunday. But temperatures outside right now, much warmer than this time yesterday. We're in the low 60s across the board. 61 in Norfolk and Virginia Beach, 61 in Hampton and Newport News, 62 there in Suffolk. Manio sitting in the upper 50s. It is a bit of a breezy day. We've seen gusts 20 to 30 plus miles an hour across the area. Seeing right now 28 mile per hour gusts in Virginia Beach, 28 in Hampton, 23 in Chesapeake, 29 over in Elizabeth City. And we'll see those gusts coming down as we head into tonight and into tomorrow morning as well. And tomorrow afternoon, it's not going to be as breezy. But again, highs for today right around, the mid to upper 50s to right around 60 degrees. And as we take a look at our satellite and radar, we are looking good, which is fantastic news because some of y'all may have been hearing about the Northern Lights. Were you guys able to see any Northern Lights last night?
I did not see any last night. Oh, but here we go.
Yeah, look at that.
Wow.
Isn't that nice?
Gloucester?
That's in Gloucester.
That looks amazing.
I know. But we have another chance for tonight as well. If you missed out.
Now, can you see this throughout the 757, or was that strictly up in the Williamsburg, James City County area?
So light pollution's a big deal. So, if you're in downtown, it's going to be tough to see. Here's like a viewing graphic. So if you're basically in the purple areas, you're pretty good. So Elizabeth City, Ahoskie, Franklin. But if you're in Virginia Beach, you're in Norfolk, there's a lot of light pollution, so it's a lot harder to see. But if you're in the Eastern Shore, the Northern Neck, the peninsulas should be looking pretty good to see some of these northern lights tonight. And also, it's going to be less cloudy than last night. Could see a few clouds, but overall, it's going to be mostly clear, especially if you're going out around, midnight. Mostly clear skies. Things should be looking really, really nice. And we'll see more clouds pushing in heading into the early morning. So I would say the sooner the better to do some of the viewing. And it'll be cool. We'll be in the low 40s. Mainly clear skies, though, so it's going to be a really great night for it if you're able to get out. I don't know if I will be able to see them because I fell asleep at 8:30 last night, and I have a feeling tonight will be similar.
Why the early bedtimes?
I'm just tired.
Of course, you are up working hard on our morning weather forecasts all the way through the afternoon. You're on the 4 p.m. with us sometimes. I don't think anyone works a more diverse schedule than Hunter Forst. So any bedtime that you need is perfectly reasonable. I want to ask about these northern lights. How rare is this that we get to experience this year?
This happens, every so often. It's not extremely rare, but the strength of this is a little bit more rare. Some people, even all the way down towards the Gulf Coast, have a chance to see, some of these northern lights, which doesn't happen very often. So, it's definitely a chance to see them if you never have before. I would say the further south you are, of course, the harder it's going to be able to see. You may be able to see them with your camera. But the more north you are, could see them, straight up with your eyeballs. So,
wow.
Yeah.
All right. Incredible pictures there from Gloucester and Poquoson.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got the northern lights. Get out there and see them if you're in the right area. We've got copy and paste weather days for the next week. What leads to that type of situation? There's just no forces fighting against each other out there?
We just have a nice area of high pressure that's going to be kind of sitting over us the next couple of days. So that's going to help give us those really nice clear skies. Jet stream isn't acting wonky, so we're just going to be seeing, your average type of temperatures for this time of year, which are in the mid to lower 60s. So that's what we can expect over the next couple of days. And as we head into, tomorrow morning, a few clouds, not as chilly in the morning, mid 40s, kind of where we should be for this time of year. And then by the afternoon, once again, more sunshine, upper 50s to right around 60 for Thursday afternoon. And it's just going to be like that heading into Friday as well. Friday morning, a little bit cooler in the mid-30s inland, low 40s closer to the coast. But that sunshine, upper 50s right around 60 for the afternoon. And heading into Friday night, if you guys have any Friday night plans, clear skies, upper 40s around 7:30. And then we get into the day on Saturday, the weekend in the middle of November. Not bad. 62, mostly sunny. And then we will be right around 70 on Sunday.
All right.
Don't you love to see it?
Beautiful Sunday, a beautiful weekend.
I know.
Overall, but just multiple in a row. We're kind of, you never know what you're going to get during the week, but we're just getting blessed with nice weekends here.
We really are. Knock on wood.
Okay. Thank you for the good luck knock. All right. Now, what else do we need to know here? It appears as though, in terms of precipitation, the rest of the week is going to be clear.
Rest of the week clear, into the weekend clear. Our next chance to see some showers will be likely on Tuesday.
Okay, and an umbrella or a jacket early in the morning, then the sun comes out.
Yeah.
Transition into maybe sweater weather.
Yeah.
And then the jacket back on at night.
Yeah. It's the time of year where you get really large temperature swings from the morning and into the afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah. This is classic fall weather in Hampton Roads.
Classic fall weather.
Yep.
Classic.
And we had snow just yesterday morning.
I know.
That was very brief.
It was very brief, but snow nonetheless.
Snow nonetheless. So snow nonetheless on a Tuesday, 70 degrees on a Sunday.
Yep.
So again, a very appropriate sort of roller coaster weather for the Hampton Roads area. Okay, now, Hunter Forrest, as an expert, what else do the people need to know about their weather forecast? As the expert, I should say. As the preeminent meteorologist in the Live Impact News studio right now.
There's, nothing too crazy going on. I mean, it's
that's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
It is a good thing to hear you say that. I mean, that works well for us. If there's nothing too crazy going on, that means everything is calm.
I'll throw up the 7-day, and you could see sunshine, sunshine.
Beautiful.
Okay,
fantastic. Well, you have definitely you've blessed us here, Hunter.
I was trying to say sunshine like a lot in a row, and that's tough. It's like saying Sally sells seashells by the seashore.
Yeah, I was going to do it with you, and then I realized you were walking down
I was
a
struggling.
losing road.
Yeah,
It was not
and you're like,
work.
I'm not going to partake.
So we have a new 6:30. Here's a shameless plug. We have a 6:30 p.m. show now here on 13 News Now Plus. 6:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Nia Campbell is the producer. I am the anchor. Your compadre, Evan Stewart, is our meteorologist. And Nia put a story in there yesterday where the word seashells was said 3 times in like 2 sentences. And I was fighting for my life.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It wasn't easy. But we made it happen.
Are you coming for my writing?
The writing was tremendous, but you have to know your anchor. He just certain words get to us.
Seashells is tough.
Seashells is
especially
helpful
for Connor.
Well, okay, all right, hold on. Now it's tough. It's tough for all of us who talk for a living. All right, well, Hunter,
I'll
awesome.
keep that in mind.
Go ahead, Nia.
I said I'll keep that in mind.
We don't want to restrict your writing. We want you to blossom. We want you to express yourself the way that you need to.
Right.
It's us who needs to get better.
Right.
Yes. Hunter, we will do pronunciation practice after the stream. I think you and I will have some time.
Perfect.
Okay. Now, Nia, do you have any questions before we let Hunter go?
No questions. I
Okay.
will actually try to see the Northern Lights tonight.
Get some good
Possibly.
pics.
I'll try.
And then send them over.
That means the last question for you, Hunter, is where can we see you next?
I will be on Daybreak tomorrow.
Okay. We won't see you at 4 o'clock.
I will not be there at 4 o'clock. Evan Stewart will be there at 4.
Okay.
Tomorrow I will be doing the 7 to 9 stream.
Okay.
Lost my train of thought.
Take your time.
7 a.m. to 9 a.m. stream, and then I will be doing the noon show.
Listen, this is a perfect platform for losing your train of thought because we got plenty of time and space to find it. Awesome. Well, we will see you tomorrow morning, Hunter. Thanks so much for hanging with us
Thank
for a
you.
little bit here.
I will be doing the 4 on Friday, though.
Okay, so mark your calendars.
Mark your
set
calendars.
your alarms. 4 p.m. on Friday. Hunter Forrest on the 4 p.m. show. And unfortunately, we have come to the end here on Live Impact News. We don't have much time left. I know, Nia, we had a couple other things that we wanted to do, but I do not think we will have enough time. We have come to the end of the road here on Live Impact News on this Wednesday. Now, it was a busy Wednesday. We were extremely lucky to have Congresswoman Jen Kiggans join us on the day that the House is back in session for the first time in 54 days. We know how busy she is, and we appreciate her taking time out of that day so that her constituents here in Hampton Roads can hear from her directly. So we had Jen Kiggans in studio. We also had an update from the Louisville plane crash that we listened in live on that press conference. All 14 victims in that plane crash have been identified as a devastating story continues to get sadder in Louisville, Kentucky, as now that community looks to rebuild from such a tragic event. Of course, we heard from Hakeem Jeffries as this government shutdown is likely to come to an end after the House of Representatives votes tonight on the funding resolution that is on the table. First votes shortly after 5 p.m., a final vote after 7 p.m. This is the 43rd day of this shutdown. That is a record here in the United States of America. So we obviously will be keeping an eye on that. And that kind of gives us, that is the total of what we talked about today. We did have White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt did do a press briefing earlier, and FBI Director Kash Patel took to the podium with an announcement regarding the precursors, the ingredients, I want to find the right word, the subsidiaries that are used to make fentanyl, and a deal that was struck with China between President Trump and the Chinese government to restrict or control the 7 subsidiaries that are used to make the drug fentanyl, something that has been a priority for this administration is stopping the flow of that drug here in the United States. That is a step in doing so. So a lot going on today, a lot of updates to give, but that's why we have Live Impact News. And as always, we greatly appreciate you for joining. And even more, as always, any last words, Nia Campbell?
No words from me.
No words from Nia Campbell. So then the last word will be, we hope to see you on Thursday here on Live Impact News.